90% of backyard farming videos are lying to you. They tell you to start with 20 different seed varieties, 3 kinds of compost, drip irrigation timers, and a full flock of chickens. Then 3 months later, you're standing in a yard full of dead plants, an empty wallet, and a rooster your neighbors want to kill. The advice isn't wrong because people are dumb. It's wrong because the people giving it have 5 acres, a big barn, and a decade of trial and error they never actually show you. Here's what those videos never tell you. Food production is not about variety, it's about biological synergy. The right 3 plants and the right 4 animals working together in the same small space will outproduce a standard grocery aisle week after week. No tractor, no acreage, no $800 raised bed kits. This is the exact combination, and this is the math that makes it work. Let's start with your calorie base. Here's the number most people never look up. According to data from the University of Idaho Extension and the USDA crop yield tables, potatoes grown in traditional in-ground rows produce roughly 1 to 2 pounds per square foot. Grow them in fabric grow bags, and that number jumps to 4 to 5 pounds per square foot. That is not a marketing claim. That is a physics outcome. Grow bags force roots to air prune at the bag edge, which stops them from circling and wasting energy. Instead of pushing one long root down into compacted soil looking for nutrients, the plant sends out hundreds of fine feeder roots. More feeder roots means more nutrient uptake per day. More uptake means more starch converted into tubers. A single 10-gallon grow bag will yield between 3 and 5 pounds of potatoes in 60 to 90 days, depending on your variety. Plant 4 of those bags in a 4x4 foot corner of your yard, and you are looking at 12 to 20 pounds of calories per harvest cycle. Sweet potatoes need a longer window, 90 to 120 days, but they return 1 to 2 pounds per plant in the same grow bag setup, and the vines themselves are edible, which doubles your usable harvest without adding any space. Now here's the failure point that nobody admits. Grow bags dry out, faster than any pot, faster than ground soil. If you plant potatoes in a grow bag and water them once every 2 days in summer heat, you will get marble-sized tubers and wonder why the system doesn't work. The root zone needs consistent moisture. A simple moisture meter from any garden center costs about $8 and prevents this specific failure. Let's talk about continuous harvest versus single-cut harvest. This is where most beginners lose months of production without knowing it. A determinate tomato plant sets all its fruit at once, ripens it together, and then stops. That's what grocery operations grow because it makes mechanical harvesting easier. You do not want that in a backyard system. You want an indeterminate variety, Sungold, Cherokee Purple, Brandywine Black Crim. These plants keep their apical meristem active, meaning the growing tip at the top of the plant never triggers its own shutdown signal. They keep growing upward and keep setting new flower clusters as long as temperatures stay between 55 and 85 degrees Fahrenheit and the plant has nitrogen. Here's the mechanical key that most guides gloss over. Remove every sucker that grows in the V-shaped junction between the main stem and a branch. Each sucker you leave will become a full secondary stem competing for the plant's photosynthetic energy. Remove them while they're small, under 2 inches, and you redirect that energy entirely into fruit production on the main stem. A single properly pruned indeterminate tomato grown vertically on a 7-foot stake can produce 20 to 30 pounds of fruit in a season in a USDA hardiness zone 6 through 9 climate. If tomatoes are outside your climate window, grow kale instead. Kale is not a plant you harvest once. It is a plant you harvest from. The outer leaves are the oldest, darkest, and most nutritious. Remove those, and the plant pushes 3 new leaves from the center. One kale plant in a 12-inch pot can produce cuttable leaves every 7 to 10 days for 6 to 8 months in mild climates. That is not an estimate. That number comes from Oregon State University Extension's small plot vegetable production data. The caloric density won't match potatoes, but the micronutrient output, vitamin K, vitamin C, beta-carotene, is unmatched per square foot among cool season crops. This is the plant that cuts your fertilizer bill to zero. and most people never understand exactly why. Bush beans and all legumes form a symbiotic relationship with rhizobium bacteria in the soil. The bacteria colonize the root, forming small nodules you can actually see if you pull a plant after harvest. Inside those nodules, the bacteria pull nitrogen gas directly from the air, which is 78% nitrogen, and convert it into ammonium ions that the plant's root hairs absorb. This process is called biological nitrogen fixation. It is not metaphorical. It is a measurable biochemical exchange. A healthy stand of bush beans can fix between 80 and 200 pounds of nitrogen per acre per growing season, according to data published by the University of Minnesota Extension. Scaled to a 10 by 10 foot plot, that is a meaningful reduction in supplemental fertilizer need for whatever you plant next in that bed. Here's the critical step people skip. To get maximum nitrogen fixation, you need the right bacteria present in your soil. If your soil has never grown legumes before, inoculate your seeds with a rhizobium inoculant before planting. It costs about $6 for enough to treat a full pound of seeds, and it is the difference between a plant that fixes nitrogen and one that mostly just grows beans. Without inoculant in depleted soil, you can have all the beans in the world and see no nitrogen benefit at all. Bush beans go from seed to first harvest in 45 to 60 days. Planted densely in a 2 by 4 foot section, one planting returns roughly 3 to 4 pounds of fresh beans, and if you stagger your planting by 3 weeks, you maintain continuous production across the whole season. Leave your final harvest's root systems in the ground when you pull the plants. Don't compost the roots. Let them decompose in place so the nitrogen-rich nodules break down directly into your soil, where your potatoes and tomatoes will feed next. Now let's talk protein. Most people hear backyard animals and immediately picture chickens, and chickens are fine, but if you're working with a standard suburban yard, say, under 2,000 square feet, chickens have real problems. A hen needs 2 to 4 square feet of coop space and 8 to 10 square feet of outdoor run. They're loud during laying. They destroy soil structure if they free-range on a small plot, and they take about 18 to 24 weeks from hatch to first egg. Cottonix quail solve every single one of those problems. First, the space requirement. A Cottonix quail needs 1 square foot of floor space per bird in a wire cage. A 3-tier quail cage measuring 2 feet by 3 feet per tier holds up to 18 birds and occupies 6 square feet of ground space. In a system with 4 quail, 1 male and 3 females, you need roughly 4 square feet of vertical cage space. That fits on a back porch, in a carport, or against a fence. Second, the production timeline. Cottonix quail reach sexual maturity at 6 to 8 weeks of age. That is not a typo. A chick hatched today begins laying before the end of its 2nd month. A Cottonix hen lays 1 egg per day under good lighting conditions, 14 to 16 hours of light per day. 3 hens produce 20 to 21 eggs per week. Those eggs are small, roughly 1/3 the weight of a chicken egg, but their yolk-to-white ratio is higher, and they contain significantly more iron and B12 per gram than a standard chicken egg, according to USDA National Nutrient Database comparisons. Third, the noise level. Cottonix males make a call that tops out at around 60 to 65 decibels, roughly equivalent to a normal conversation. This is not zero noise, but it is categorically different from a rooster, which hits 90 decibels, the same range as a lawn mower, and calls at 4 in the morning. The common failure point with quail is heat and light management. Cottonix stop laying when temperatures exceed 95 degrees Fahrenheit or when light drops below 12 hours per day. If you're in a hot climate and your cage is in direct afternoon sun, production will crater in summer. Shade the cage and add a cheap $6 timer to a single LED grow light to keep your light hours consistent year-round. What do you feed them? This is where the system connects. A Cottonix quail needs 20 to 25% crude protein in its diet to maintain peak egg production. Commercial game bird starter achieves this, but you can supplement, not replace, with the outer leaves you prune from your kale and the trimmings from your tomato plants. Quail will eat soft greens enthusiastically, and the calcium in kale supports shell hardness. This is not a full feed replacement. It is a meaningful reduction in commercial feed consumption, maybe 15 to 20%, which adds up over a full year. Here's where these two systems stop being separate projects and become one machine. Fresh Cottonix quail droppings test at approximately 1% nitrogen, 1% phosphorus, and 1% potassium, written as 111 in fertilizer notation. That is a balanced, complete fertilizer, because quail produce small, dry pellets rather than the wet slurry of larger poultry. Their droppings don't need extended hot composting to be safe to use. A simple cold composting bin, a wooden pallet frame works fine, breaks them down in 4 to 6 weeks into a stable, odorless amendment. Apply that compost to the base of your tomatoes and kale, and you've replaced commercial nitrogen fertilizer entirely for those beds. A 4-quail system generates roughly 1/3 of a pound of dry droppings per day. Composted and applied to a 10 by 10 foot growing space, this is sufficient to maintain soil fertility for your vegetables with no purchased inputs beyond the initial soil setup. Trim your bean and tomato leaves, feed the soft ones to the quail droppings go to the compost. The compost feeds the beans, tomatoes, and potatoes. The potatoes and tomatoes feed you, and the trimmings feed the quail. Nothing exits the system except your harvest. This is not a metaphor for sustainability. It is a literal nutrient cycle. Every organic molecule you don't buy is a dollar you don't spend, and every input you produce inside the system is one less trip to the garden center. Let's put real figures on what this actually costs and produces. Startup costs conservatively priced. 4 Cottonix quail chicks run $3 to $5 each, so $12 to $20 total. A simple wire cage, built DIY with hardware cloth and a wood frame, costs $25 to $45. 4 10-gallon grow bags run $12 to $20 total. 2 bags of quality potting mix, 2 cubic feet each, cost $20 to $30. 1 indeterminate tomato transplant runs $3 to $6. 1 pack of bush bean seeds, enough for multiple plantings, costs $3 to $5. 1 kale transplant or seed packet costs $2 to $4. Rhizobium inoculant runs $5 to $7, and a basic 50-pound bag of quail feed costs $18 to $25. Total first month startup cost, approximately $100 to $160, depending on your region. Now weekly output at steady state, after 8 weeks. You're looking at 18 to 21 quail eggs per week from 3 hens, approximately 1 to 2 pounds of kale cuttings per week once established, 1 to 2 pounds of bean harvest per week during peak season with staggered planting, and 12 to 20 pounds of potatoes per 60 to 90 day cycle from 4 grow bags. At current average grocery prices, roughly $4 to $6 per dozen eggs, $3 to $4 per pound of kale, $2 to $3 per pound of green beans, and $1.50 to $2 per pound of potatoes. This system replaces $25 to $40 of grocery spending per week at full production. That is a payback period of 4 to 6 weeks from the time your first harvest hits. Before you buy anything, here's what this system doesn't do. It does not make you fully food self-sufficient. Caloric self-sufficiency requires far more land, more variety, and a grain source. This system reduces your grocery bill and gives you reliable fresh protein, greens, and starches. That's a real significant outcome. It is not the whole picture. It requires daily attention. Quail need fresh water every day. They are sensitive to dehydration and will stop laying within 24 hours of running dry. The grow bags need checking every morning in summer. The compost bin needs turning every 2 weeks. If you travel frequently without someone to cover your chores, this system will fail. It also requires learning to troubleshoot. Quail are prey animals. They panic easily. A neighborhood cat sitting on top of the cage for 3 nights will reduce egg production measurably through stress alone. Tomatoes in grow bags will show nutrient deficiency if the compost isn't ready in time. Bush beans in heavy clay soil, even in bags, need a well-draining mix, not garden soil pulled straight from the ground. The people who succeed at small-scale food production are not the ones with the biggest setup. They're the ones who paid close attention to the first small system fixed what broke, and understood why it broke before scaling up. Start with these 7 items. Fill in what's missing with the resources below. Drop your yard size in the comments and say what climate zone you're in. That changes which variety of potato and which indeterminate tomato to use, and I'll give you the exact answer. The food you grow this season isn't just food, it's proof that the system works. Build the proof first.